If Tibet really become land of, you see, so-called Han Chinese, that's a real end. There is and there is a present, you see, situation. If this remain another, say, a few years, then there is every danger Tibetan become minority in their own land.
The map has changed recently. The region called Tibet has shrunk in population from 6 to 2 millions. 2 eastern provinces have been hived off. The mineral wealth is in the eastern provinces.
I do not want to participate in future democratic self-government. You see, if I remain as a leader, it automatically, you see, becomes something, you see, hindrance for development of their own sort of, you see, sense of responsibility. So that's why, you see, I thought much better, you see, to remain outside. Because, you see, I really want, you see, to develop genuine, healthy, democratic, you see, atmosphere.
If the Tibetans wanted to abolish his office, the 14th Dalai Lama wouldn't object. His preference is for the spiritual role rather than the political. How does he really see himself? Spiritual leader, ruler in exile, or plain Buddhist monk?
I always remember, oh, I'm monk. I never felt I'm Dalai Lama in my dream. That means, in deep down, I always, I really, you see, involve as a monk rather than Dalai Lama. I'm not the best Dalai Lama, at the same time, not the worst. So during that period, if the last one, that's fine.
In a trance induced by hours of hypnotic chanting, the state oracle of Tibet makes his grand entrance in a Tibetan monastery in India. This ceremony is part of the Dalai Lama's ritual which unreservedly retains the values and the ceremonies of the past, transplanted from the Tibet of centuries ago. The oracle makes his predictions. Traditionally, he's consulted on all questions of importance to the state. An ancient ritual, rarely seen by Western eyes, reaches its climax as the trance ends. Far away from the mountains, in the hot south on the flat, arid plains of India, their religion flourishes. Drebung Monastery. The name means place of fulfillment, a replica of the monastery destroyed in the Chinese occupation. The Tibetans have rebuilt here in southern India their 3 major monasteries, which are alive with thousands of monks. On this settlement at Mundgod, Tibetan nomads herd cattle and live in stone farmhouses. 6,000 Tibetans farming 4,000 acres. As well as rearing cattle, they grow maize, rice and cotton. As farmers, they're almost self-sufficient, but there's still a small subsidy from the Indian government. It was all very different when the first 300 Tibetans came here to a refugee camp in 1966. The land was leased to them by an Indian government trying desperately to cope with the refugee problem. All was forest, which the Tibetans cleared. Many died from malaria, tuberculosis, and the unaccustomed heat. Today, these farms are held up as models of what can be achieved on reclaimed land. The Indian government built the farmsteads for the Tibetans. There are 9 villages in this settlement and similar settlements in other parts of India. A council meeting of the headmen from the settlements. Some are delegates to the National Assembly in Dharamsala. All have been elected by free ballot. They're discussing the purchase of new tractors. Eventually, a vote is taken. At the tractor cooperative, they have 14 machines, which they service and hire out to encourage modern methods of agriculture. By no means all Tibetan farmers are mechanized. A salesman is trying to lease a tractor to a farmer. He's brought his family and friends to help decide on a replacement for his oxen. Naturally, he wants a demonstration. But it's not easy to convince traditional farmers. They have an ingrained preference for animals over the machine. And anyway, the quality of the ploughing is not to everyone's liking. But this is an ancient game. The salesman does his best. The farmer isn't sure, perhaps if the price is right. On the settlement, life revolves around the temple. The Dalai Lama is preaching and the fields are empty. The service goes on for hours. It's partly a social occasion. Monks serve tea and there's food blessed by the Dalai Lama. And between refreshments, the Dalai Lama prays for the long life of his people. Then the people in turn pray for the long life of His Holiness. They believe he can choose the moment of his death, and they don't wish it to be soon. The Dalai Lama's message is that theirs has been an unfortunate generation, but they can turn adversity into achievement as an example to the rest of the world. In the settlement, there's another surprise, a Western-style hospital with modern medicines. Doctors from here are trained in European hospitals. Tibetans who don't want Western medicine may still use the homeopathic tradition. But there is a modern pharmacy here and a prescription service. A Tibetan settlement, Western style. In the village, there's provision for the old and the young. There's an old people's home with 200 residents, a kindergarten, and all children over 7 go to the village school. At the monastery, the monks take an active part in the life of the village. They run their own printing press and undertake commercial work for firms in the area. But the greater part of their printing is for religious purposes. The monastery is also a university. There are more than 3,000 monks here. Buddhist texts must be committed to memory in preparation for the examinations. One of the teaching methods used in the monastery is debating in ritual form. The clapped hands emphasize the question and symbolize the potential closing of the gates of hell if it's wrongly answered. The questions are all on Buddhist texts. The abbot delivers a lecture. It can take the trainee monks who are listening to him 20 to 30 years to qualify. They start usually from the age of 10. It's finals day. 2 graduates are interrogated in front of their colleagues. The class of degree they achieve will depend on how well they perform. These monks are the Dalai Lama's army, his church militant. They're taught self-sacrifice, non-violence, respect for all forms of life. Some of them will return to Tibet. But how do they regard the Chinese, who've taken over their homeland?
You see, we try to cultivate some kind of infinite love and compassion. Therefore, there is no point to exclude China, a quarter of human population. I have no use to feel hatred or negative thing. It actually, you see, self-torture, something like that. No good, no use.
This idea was not acceptable to us because it clearly suggested that Tibet could be in association with the People's Republic of China. Now that is putting our own neck into the gallows. The reason why we did not accept this is not because we have any doubts about the leadership of His Holiness. We have reaffirmed our faith in him, in his leadership. But because we have no faith in the Chinese, we are not just fighting for a piece of land. We are struggling for survival.
The Chinese may find Tibet too rich a prize to let go. In the 8th century, a Tibetan mystic prophesied, when iron boats fly and horses run on wheels, Tibetans will be scattered like ants, and the word of Buddha will be brought to the outside world. That time may have come. The Dalai Lama and these exiled Tibetans may never return to their homeland.